Our speaker this morning is Patrick J. McKenna. Patrick is director and co-founder, along with his wife Lori, of the Virginia Beach Justice Initiative, known as the VBJI, a faith-based nonprofit organization founded in 2011. VBJI is dedicated to ending trafficking and helping victims in southeastern Virginia. Mr. McKenna has lectured extensively and conducted numerous training on human trafficking, been a panelist at a number of summits and symposiums, and has been interviewed on TBN, CBN, local television stations ABC, NBC, and CBS affiliates, radio and newspaper and internet news sources. In conjunction with the Virginia Beach Coalition Against Human Trafficking, Kids Are Not For Sale in Virginia Coalition, and the Richmond Justice Initiative, he helped develop and coordinate state legislative and policy initiatives resulting in the passage of 17 new pieces of anti-human trafficking legislation during the 2012 through 2015 Virginia General Assembly sessions. Mr. McKenna has practiced law for over 25 years and is a member of the Virginia State Bar. He earned his BA and Bachelor's of Music degree cum laude from SUNY at Potsdam and his JD degree from Regent University School of Law. He has been happily married to Lori for 26 years and is a proud father of 3 children, all of whom are in college. Let's give a warm Rotary welcome to Patrick McKenna.
All right, I'm going to go to the podium if that's okay with you. If you can't hear me at any point, just give me a thumbs up or something, or let me know. All right, human trafficking. Before I came today, who has heard those 2 terms? Anybody in the room has not heard those 2 terms? Okay, we're making progress. 2 years ago, if I had done this presentation in a room like this, half of you would not have heard that terminology. So, before today, if somebody had told you that it was happening here in Virginia Beach, or Norfolk, or Chesapeake, or any of the local cities in the Hampton Roads area, would you have known that was true?
Yes.
Show of hands, please. Okay, well, quite a few of you. All right. So, that may be because the Rotary Club has this focus. That's great. Most times when I'm doing this, in fact, I did several presentations over the last 2 weeks, and approximately 5 to 0 have raised their hands on that issue related to Hampton Roads. And quite frankly, I got involved in this issue kind of as God would kind of lead, I guess. 2010, I'm minding my own business. My daughter is a sophomore in high school at the time, wrote a paper about this thing called human trafficking. Now, I was so ignorant that I didn't know that human trafficking was happening anywhere in the world, let alone here in the United States. But the focus of her paper was the United States of America. And I was a public defender for a number of years in Virginia Beach. I represented women who were charged with prostitution. I didn't have a clue that some of those women that I represented may have been being trafficked, that it wasn't their choice. In fact, overwhelmingly, if you all have been studying this issue, you know that huge percentage of women or men who are being trafficked don't do it because they want to. That's one of the biggest myths, that we somehow, those who purchase women or men who are being prostituted, try to convince themselves of, that they're doing this because they want to. Frankly, that's one of the biggest lies that helps perpetuate the crime of trafficking. And so, I got this knowledge from my daughter writing this paper, but I didn't really do anything with it, which is the exact opposite of what I'm going to ask you to do this morning. But I was, during that financial brouhaha, I was working at a large law firm downtown Norfolk, let it remain nameless. And for, I'm just kidding here, for the reward of bringing my department into the black, I was restructured out of my position and found myself looking for work. It's 2010 still, and I looked at various other law firms, and because everybody was really, they had positions out there, but they decided to pull them off the market, to go in-house with the needs and such that they had. So I'm looking around, and nothing's really open. So I can practice by myself. I've done that in the past. But I thought, maybe this is the time to use my degree for something else other than practicing and representing banks, mortgage companies, and other such entities. And I became in contact with a young lady, her name is Sarah Pomeroy, who began an organization called the Richmond Justice Initiative. There are 6 of us around the state. Richmond Justice Initiative was the very first one. And she was in need of an attorney to help her with policy, with legislation and such. And so I thought, wow, that's right up my alley. I'd love to be able to get involved in that area. Public policy is a big area of interest for me, especially in this, something that would have to do with social justice. And so I was able to get in contact with her. This was back in 2011. And I began helping her with these policy initiatives. And then she said, you know what? There's several young people down in the Virginia Beach area. They want to start a justice initiative. Would you and your wife consider helping them get it going? You know my wife and I at all. We are not a fan of meetings for meeting's sake. If we can't be doing something with the information and knowledge that we're getting, we don't want to be involved. I mean, it's just that simple. Life's too short. There's too many good things to do. And so we wanted to make sure that we're making a difference. So we began with the focus of making sure that in the raising of awareness, we were doing something more than that. And one of the first things that occurred to us was, if we raise awareness, what happens when the first person calls us and identifies that they think they see a trafficking situation going on? Or a trafficking victim calls us and says, I need help. We realized immediately that we did not know what was going on in this area. We didn't know who was working in this area. We didn't know if there was any partnerships or coalitions or anything else going on. So it sent us on a mad scramble to find that out. And it also set the course and the direction that VBGI has handled since that time. And we're going to talk about that in a moment. Now, what makes me want to get up, not my favorite hour, to come eat breakfast, and that's certainly not my favorite hour, is join you fine folks here. I really appreciate the opportunity, but I'm not a morning person. So if you get an email from me at 2 in the morning, it's not, you know, that's my opportune time sometimes. But that same daughter I was talking to you about was watching a documentary. If you ever get a chance to see it, I highly recommend it. It's called Nefarious. And in that documentary, there is a reenactment of a scene of a young woman who had been trafficked. And she's in a room about 8 by 8. There's a bed in that room. There's a single light bulb in the middle of the room hanging down. There are no windows in that room. And there's a sink and a bath and toilets in a corner. And she's being filmed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, because that's where her world is. And they bring the men to her in that room, and you can guess the rest. And that's where she lives. That's her life. And suddenly God connected that girl with my daughter, who's a beautiful young junior at Virginia Tech. And that was it. It went from the head, and this being a good policy thing, you went to my heart. And so you'd have to, at this point, nearly kill me to keep me from talking about this issue and seeing to do something about it, because that should not be anybody's daughter. It should not be anybody's niece or nephew or next door neighbor or anyone at all. And so it's really kind of up to us to make sure that it, in fact, doesn't happen to somebody's niece, nephew, or daughter, or anyone else. If you'll advance the slide, please. So we're going to be looking at a few things this morning quickly, because I recognize them on a short window here. We're going to look at who we are, what we do. We're going to be looking at one thing, which is a challenge to you. A human trafficking overview, just to get a little deeper into it. Do you know Lacey, a very typical scenario. We're going to look at a short documentary. Signs of trafficking. And then news and updates and present needs for our organization. Next, please. All right, we're made up of people just like you. We have attorneys, we have law enforcement, we have Commonwealth attorneys, we have nurses and teachers and homeschool moms and such. Right, so all of us with a passion to see this prevented in the first place, ended, and to get victims the help they need. Thank you. So how do we do that? Well, I mentioned coalition. This is impossible to attack for any one organization. I don't care who that organization is. Not the United States Attorney's Office, not the FBI, not Homeland Security and such, all of which organizations we interact with and network with. It takes a community of different organizations because these victims and such have many, many needs. And to try to prevent it means that we have to get the word out into many, many circles. So, and prevention is the key. If we can prevent it, it's far easier to deal with a person than to deal with a situation of the persons who have already been trafficked. But if we can't stop it, then we look to try to work with these other organizations to work in the rescue, the identification, the rescue, then the restoration, thank you, and reintegration of those folks into society, where God intended them to be. How do we do that? Well, the first three, prevention, awareness, and education, go hand in hand. You can't begin to prevent something unless you have awareness that it's in fact going on. So I'm glad so many of you are aware it's going on in this neighborhood. Then you need to go a little deeper. You need to get education as to, well, what am I looking for? What does it look like? And something like that. And that, therefore, then leads into prevention, because then you go identify the target population, those areas where these people are most likely to be seen, and therefore we can try to reach them before they're actually victimized. Advocacy is a twofold piece that we engage in. You heard about legislation. I'm hoping to say that if the government at least doesn't take any action, we'll have 2 new pieces of legislation to add to the legislation we've already had enacted in the last 4 years. Advocacy also goes into we work directly with victims of trafficking. Have a table outside with materials on it is a bookmark. If you're praying people, I'd ask you to be lifting up the folks around the list because they're all women who we have worked with. Some are active cases, some come in and out of the organizations live because of the nature of this. They often unfortunately return to their trafficker even when they're rescued because of the psychological manipulation that's going on. We'll talk briefly about that. Restoration, of course, part of the peace, and we consider everything needs to be undergirded in prayer. One thing, okay. What one action will you take? And I always say I feel somewhat that if, as a result of what I've shared with you, if you don't do something, that I kind of feel like I've failed in a sense. And you want me to feel like a failure when it comes to the Rotary Club, do you? I didn't think so, gives you. All right, so what is it? Does it have to be huge? No, but I am asking you to do something because this issue is too big for us not to do something. It can be as much as to invite somebody to our monthly meet. It can be go get more education yourself so you can be more aware in your world. It could be helping us in terms of fundraising. It could be any number of things. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I am asking you to make a commitment to do something because otherwise we will never effectively address this issue. Now, we have to look beneath the surface. What do I mean by that? Well, slavery 150 years ago was right out in your face in this area. Slave plantation owners may have bragged about the number of slaves they had, the size of their plantation and such. You're not going to see anybody putting a billboard out there that I have 4 women in my stable or in my family, or 5 or 6, or the average number is usually 5 in a pimp's family or stable, as they call it. So, but he may brag within his circles, but he's certainly not going to be, because everything that he does to this victim is to make it such that they become an object. They become like an animal. They become such as the pimp who snaps his fingers and expects that woman to get down on the floor where he said had a spot designated for her, and then she's to stay there until he snaps his finger and says it's okay for her to get up. That's the kind of manipulation we're talking about. That's why when that person smiles on the pornographic video or in the film or in the pictures, not most, but much of the hardcore pornography is traffic related. Most of the hardcore images you may be looking at online, I'm sure nobody in this room, but that people may be looking at online, pornographic related. So we need to be able to see those things, identify signs, and go from there. All right. Virginia in 2014 was number 5 in the country in terms of called-in reported cases. Who do you guess was number 1? Good guess. California, number 1 on the list. Okay, how about number 2?
New York.
Texas.
New York is good, top 5, but not number 2.
Texas.
Texas is a good guess. Yes, Texas is number 2. How about, did I hear Florida? Somebody say Florida? I just said Florida. Okay. And New York. So you can see that we're up in good company. Why would Virginia be so high on this list?
Up and down the East Coast.
Right, up and down the East Coast is a very mobile issue. It tends to move from up in circle. We work with women from New York, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Maine, coming through this circuit, getting stopped here, sometimes arrested here. You've got, what else? Military presence, yes, another big feeder. Virginia Beach is?
Truckers.
What's that? Truckers, yes. Interstates, big reason. Got one of the largest ports on the eastern seaboard here. They only check 1 out of every 10 containers, if I understand it correctly. All kinds of things could potentially come through. You've got a large tourist area. We say Virginia Beach just as an initiative for name recognition. We could have used Hampton Roads, we could have used Tidewater, but organizations outside of this area that we network with don't have a clue. We say Virginia Beach, you know immediately. We get the tourist element coming in. So the fact of the matter is, with all these different things and then more, we have a large homeless contingent of youth that come into this area because of the Virginia Beach thing. If trafficking were not happening, it would be a miracle, frankly. And so that's why it's so important that we are aware and we be taking some action related to it. Okay, what is it briefly? Okay, it's a form of modern day slavery. And it basically, we're trafficking for exploitation purposes, somebody's vulnerability for either commercial sex or for labor. And they use force, fraud, or coercion. That's a federal definition. Virginia says force, intimidation, deception. We don't know how you get at it. There's certain elements of there, or it's anybody under 18 for commercial sex. Why would this true? Here's we've got human trafficking running hard on drugs to supplant it as the #1 criminal activity in the world. Focus on why that would be.
Unlimited supply.
Supply, yes. What good answers? More answers than that.
Is there a relationship with drug dealing and human trafficking?
There is, in fact, and especially in gangs and organized crime, we're recognizing this. But how many times can you sell a drug? Once. How many times can you sell a young woman in a night? Yeah, it's 10 to 20 on average. Right? So if that's what we're talking about, then so he can sell that over and over and over again. And he's got a victim that's unwilling to testify in most cases because of psychological manipulation. This is her boyfriend. He takes good care of her. He gives her scraps from the McDonald's that he ate that he didn't want to eat. And he bailed her out of jail when she got arrested and such. So, I mean, he gives her clothes, albeit, clothes that are particularly for her work. But he does those things for her. He takes care of her. That's it. Look up Stockholm Syndrome after this meeting, and that could be one thing you do as to why that happens. Okay? And that's the why of it. Where do we find it? Well, see, these are some of the places we can find it locally. Frankly, we do ride along to the city of Newport News. We're seeing less and less on streets of what you would typically think of prostitution, than walking the tracks, okay? They still exist, but it's less and less. Why? Because you can do it so much easier and so much more clandestine under the internet. You can go on the escort service on Backpage.com and you'll find tons of women and men being advertised there in every single city. Not that I want to recommend you go there, and you'll be able to tell whether they're on the circuit, so they'll say some euphemism like "we're back" or "be here just for a short time," "love to see you." You get some euphemism of whether or not they're actually adults, because they'll be in the 18 to 19-year-old range. A big clue that they're not in fact adults, but they're in fact juveniles. And so that's a huge one that gets used. And massage parlors, you probably heard about the busts that have happened recently, because Chesapeake and Virginia Beach, Asian massage parlor is big. And these are in good neighborhoods. We have one of our advocates who walked into a massage parlor in Newport News because she had a Groupon. Well, she was in the wrong one. She was in a very nice mall area, and 2 doors down was the one where she was supposed to be. The one she walked into, nobody spoke English. There was not a man in the place. And she found out when she got down to the right one that, oh yeah, we think there may be trafficking going on there, because they pull up with a van and they unload 6 to 8 young Asian women, and then they take the ones that are there, and we only see these folks for like 2 to 3 weeks. So, clue, have you called the police? No, we haven't called the police. Didn't want to get involved. Wrong answer. Fortunately, our advocate did call the police, and that situation is being dealt with. Labor trafficking is sometimes even harder to see than what with sex trafficking, which you can be able to visualize a little more. And unfortunately, for young people, one of the major, it's the second most great way in which they're trafficked, and that is through these traveling sales crews. So be aware of that. I don't have time to tell right now, but we've had them come to our door and had some really tricky situations, so you'll be aware of that. It can happen to anybody. That's the bottom line. All the people that we have worked with so far have been our own citizens. And then, the age range. For boys, it's actually 11 to 13, besides 12 to 14. Have you been to a mall in the recent weeks? Yeah. Show of hands on these, please. Make sure you're still awake. All right. Grocery store. If you don't raise your hand, remember I'm a trial lawyer. I'm always watching to see who is paying attention. Okay. A coffee shop. Come on, you Starbucks people, I can't believe it. There's one guy in the back. I won't point him out right now. He hasn't raised his hand yet. All right. A school. And the internet. Okay. Everybody's hands will be that because it's cell phone. All right. And that foster care system, court system, but these are 5 places where normal young kids are places where traffickers are looking for victims. They're trolling the internet. They're looking for that young lady who feels not beautiful, or has had a fight with her boyfriend, is on the out with her friend, just had a fight with her friends, and he's going to strike up a conversation with them. And they may, in fact, know that this guy's older than them, even though he's saying 16 or 17 in the line. But they're kind of flattered because they're 13 or 14 years old, and this older guy's taking an interest in them. Would you know what to look for? What signs to look for? What kinds of things? So we're going to try to talk briefly about that. This next DVD, a video. This is 4 minutes long. It's really pressing on the amount of time I have left here. So I may have to take some questions outside if you're able to stay, but I want to be respectful of the time. This 4 minutes, it gives a good overview of those 4 or 5 places we mentioned, and also the kinds of things and the ways in which these traffickers manipulate their victims. So I feel it's very instructive, and we'll try to do a quick review of what we saw.
I think you got to click on it there. Use them.
There's a little play button down in this corner here. Up here a little further. Up in here.
Try to click on the screen.
Yeah,
see what
yeah,
happens.
that would work too. Yeah. Double check.
Where is it?
Well, I may end up having to tell you Lacey's story. I think it's right down. I guarantee you, I checked this out last night, it did work.
Where is it?
There should be a play hour down here. All right.
All right, looks like we're not getting it.
Okay. Okay, why don't we roll forward? There it is. Oh, right there. There we go.
Nope.
All right, my apologies. Technology, love it. All right, I'm going to tell you about Lacey briefly. Lacey is 13 years old when she began being groomed to be trafficked. She was walking past the store with some friends, a spotter, young boy, who's been hired by a pimp to identify some young women that might be potential victims of trafficking, invites them to a party that night. Small town community, state of Washington. They think, oh wow, pretty cool, they're going into the 8th grade. Why don't we get our first party out of the way? Lacey is an A student. She's a part of a youth group. She goes to a Christian school. Should be the perfect scenario for Lacey to be protected. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. Lacey goes to the party that night. She's just chilling on the couch, listening to some music. A young man comes over while her friends are all dancing. Okay, so first problem for Lacey, she's all alone. So the trafficker's going to test her to see if she's fair game for somebody who he can manipulate into being trafficked. And so he just began striking up a conversation with her, asking all kinds of questions. Very persistent in getting to know her, learning about her. And she leaves, doesn't seem anything more about it. The next time she meets this young man, he meets her in a Starbucks. Now keep in mind that Lacey knows this guy's in his mid-20s. A way that he should be messing with a 13-year-old. But he shows romantic interest. And he puts it on the fast track. And he begins stalking her, learning her routines and such. So he meets her at the Starbucks. He manages to talk her into giving the phone number. Then he begins calling her, and he intercepts her at the Safeway. And then he begins taking her out on these dates. Now she's out telling mom or dad, Lord, that this guy is interested in her. She's getting her friends to cover for her on three-way calls and such like that. And he's beginning to do nice things for her, buying a dress, taking her out to eat, getting her hair and nails done, all the things that these guys will do in that romance phase. And she really begins to think, this guy really likes me. In fact, he gives me a dress and he calls me his queen. Well, that's a trafficking term. It's intended to be used for what they call the bottom bee or the bottom girl, okay? And she's not going to be the queen. She's going to be one of the stable that he uses, but he's using terminology even in the romancing period together. And then gradually this thing shifts and he needs money. And will he help her out? And sure, she'll be willing to help out. So he takes her to a strip club at 13 years old. And she ends up dancing for men. She doesn't want to do it, but he forces her to do it. And then he begins twisting this kind of thing, we call it Stockholm Syndrome, and manipulating and beginning to tear her down and then build her up, and then tear her down and build her up. And she is so, she has a friend ask her, how would you believe that somebody loves you when they're treating you like this? And she would say to you, I don't know, I just believe he loved me. And it's this kind of manipulation that goes on. Okay, so ultimately he even cajoles her into to then beginning to sell her body. And the first time she gets in the car with 3 people, and she says she puked for a half hour afterwards. But then she has to do it over and over and over again because she gets blackmailed. Because if she refuses to do it, she's been filmed in these first times, and he's going to put it out in her school and her youth group. Or he promises to go get her 10-year-old sister if she won't cooperate, and he'll traffic her instead. What would you do as a 13-year-old? What would anybody do, finding themselves in a situation where loved ones are being threatened, and you know you can keep that from happening if you continue to do what this person's asking you to do? So she smiled and she continued to sell her body for him. Okay, so eventually, fortunately, she was rescued. She's one of the fortunate ones. Many don't make it out. 6 to 7 years, the average lifespan for somebody in this industry. So, and a high percentage of never ever leave. We have the good fortune of working with a couple of women who were rescued by law enforcement, who were able to get out, and they've helped us as an organization be more effective in how we reach out to these women and how we even portray this. So we're looking for changes in behavior for Lacey. Now she began skipping school. And that, with an A student, that's red flags there. She'd get on the bus in the morning, she'd get off, she'd go meet him down the street, she'd go to the strip club, she'd get back on the bus in the afternoon, and then she'd go home as if she had gone to school. At some point in this process, do you think somebody should have made a call or done something?
Yeah.
Nobody in her world was really tracking, understand what's going on. There was changes in dress. She began dressing more promiscuously. She's not doing as well in school. There are signs of potential abuse, because she will tell you her guy's kind of physical. That was a nice way of putting it. Choke her out if you didn't do what you wanted him to do. Begin showing signs of neglect, or begin showing signs of changes in attitude in school, affects of depression, or more promiscuous than before, things that you would not have expected. You see changes in lifestyle that will be happening all in the same kind of mix. Money that they shouldn't have, because at the beginning in that romance period they'll be giving them money. They may even let them keep some of the money that they get when they sell their bodies for the first time. That only lasts for a very short time, because all the money ultimately is going to go to that pimp. And he's willing to make the investment because he can make a couple of $1 million off of 5 women in his stable per year, tax-free. Uncle Sam didn't know about that money, and besides this
Did
kind
you
of
say
guy,
1 million?
a couple of million.
Couple million.
So, now I don't normally let folks film me, so I'll have to ask what that's, because we do all copyright on those steps. But anyway, that's the lawyer. All right, so, material possessions, change in dress. We heard about the dress and such. Tattoos, a barcode, a dollar sign. A name of a man is not in her world. A name, even more importantly, of a female that's not her name, because he's going to give her a new identity. He's going to change her name because he's going to change her personality, so he has complete and total control over her. I use her, but it could be a him just as well. All right, so what are the signs we're looking for here? Back up just for a second, please. Thank you. Changes it. The new boyfriend. It doesn't have to be really older, but because this has happened in high school situations too. But it's somebody who's in her world, who's a little bit older, who's making use of that age difference for manipulation purposes. New friends, parties, gang signs, blue, black, and red. Big signs of gang affiliation, especially if there's a banner. For young women, they're not going to be actually part of the gang, except that they're going to be economic vessels for the gang to make money in selling their bodies and to service the gang members. But for the women who get manipulated into this, who have very bad family situations, this becomes like a family thing, and they see this part of their being part of the gang. Closer to home, hope, these 3 names all have things in common. And then the fact of the matter is that they're local. They were born here, they're being trafficked here. They may have been temporarily taken out by way of circuit, but Hope is kind of our poster child for this. We've met Hope on 3 separate occasions. First time was Virginia Beach jail. We got her placed. She ran. Not atypical. They run back to their trafficker like domestic violence victims. Are you familiar with domestic violence victims in that scenario? Running back and forth. Okay, well think of domestic violence victims on steroids. Okay, they have that issue of running back to their abuser. They have rape trauma issues because they don't do this willingly. And even if they so-called did do it willingly the first time, there's going to be a point where their world is overborne. They're going to be asked to do something that they don't want to do. There's rape involved. They have drug, substance abuse issues. And then they have a 4th category, which I call the criminal informant mentality, which is what? If I tell you what I know, will you be able to protect me? Will you be able to protect my family? We had a trafficking victim who was sharing yesterday at an HR CAT meeting. I'll explain that later. And she was saying, this is life and death to these women. When they identify, they have to know that you are serious about following through and making sure they get help. Because if their trafficker finds out that they told law enforcement, they took our card to potentially get help, they could be dead women when they get back to him if he finds out. And in fact, the woman who shared yesterday, a woman who tried to leave, she was beat to death. Okay, so, and I tried the first one. So it's serious, serious business. Then they want to know too, because prostitution is criminal, what are you going to do? Are you going to arrest me? Are you going to use it against me? So the other thing, so these women are local. They also have to share this in common, which a lot of victims do. Again, it's not you. Lacey did not have a sexual abuse background, but many of them do. And traffickers seem to hone in on that vulnerability, that extra thing there. And also take place that somebody in their world close to them told them at some point that their value was in the sale of their body, that's what their worth was. And so the uncle or the stepdad or something gives them $1 to keep quiet, takes them to the store after he sexually abuses them. It's ripe game then for the trafficker to come along later and make use of that in order to manipulate her then into selling her body to many men. So what can we do? We can get them the help they need. I have the brochures out on the card. There are cards there that have this information, our number on it, as well as our website. You can find more resources. Come out to a community interest meeting. One thing could be to learn more about this. We don't have to talk rocket speed here, okay? Well, we can slow this process down. You can see the full video of what I was talking about before. You can help us with resources. I do these presentations, I don't charge anything. Why? Because I don't want them to be a hindrance to somebody, an organization bringing us in. Okay? So, I do that too, but then I rely on community, businesses, and other such, churches to support us. Because this isn't free. It costs money for brochures and materials and stuff like that. So, I ask you to support some things like Let Justice Roll run. You got any walkers or runners here? You don't have to do that. You can support me. Just go online and I'm collecting donations. My goal is $2,500. Probably somebody in this room could cut a check for that right now. All right. So, big deal. And we say it's over at Mara's Museum. You go, oh man, I gotta go to Mara's Museum? No. Yeah, well, traffickers don't have any problem at all. Remember Hope? Met her in Virginia Beach. The next time we met her was in Newport News Hospital where she come on a heroin addiction, right? Get her help, get her place, she runs again. The next time we meet Hope, it's in Hampton Hospital. They brought her in dead on arrival. They were able to bring her back to life. She really now is beginning to believe that there's hope for her. You see, Hope is not a real name. Hope is the name she chose. Because when we start working with these women, we ask them to choose a blessing name. A name that talks about the life that is before them as opposed to what was behind them. And so Hope chose Hope, which is why we call her kind of our poster child. And we believe that one day she's going to walk into that. But there's so much pain involved with these women that when she kind of messed up in her own mind, she let us down, back she goes again. And so we just keep the open door out with her. We're still in contact with Hope, letting you know you can come back, that there is hope for you, Hope. You're going to be able to walk forward.
Patrick,
Yes. Sorry.
I really want to. And you have one last little job to do. Right to your left, pick a number and read the last 3 digits.
432.
432. Charlie Fire's coming.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Be a gift